Hello, so in this video we're going to start expanding out our knowledge from just focusing on Linux to start looking at some networking knowledge as well. We'll still be working with Linux for the most part, but let's start to see how we can bridge from what we've been working on within our own computer, and it'll allow us to start looking out to working with multiple computers at the same time. So for this I do have my Ubuntu machine as well as my Metasploitable machine up. But I'm also going to do this with my Kali Linux machine as well. Remember, I created 3 virtual machines, and for the most part we've only been working with 2 of them, but I will configure this for all 3 machines so then they can all be functional together. Now on my settings here, if you right click on your virtual machine for Kali and go to settings, you very likely left off with at the network is currently attached to a NAT, network address translation. And if you remember, for our other devices we had an internal network only, this intnet, okay, internal network only. So I'm going to make sure that all 3 of my devices are on an internal closed network. They can't actually get out, they can't see anything. And then I'm going to turn him on, I'm going to start him up, and as my Kali Linux machine is turning on, I'll just kind of push it to the background and configure the others first here. So yeah, he can get going, but then we'll start configuring the Ubuntu guys and the Metasploitable, and we'll come back to the Kali in a little bit after he's all turned on. So let's start with our Metasploitable machine. So right now, if I want to see how my networking has been configured, we can do this through a handful of different commands. So one of the original commands was something like an ifconfig. This would show me information about my current adapters. I have an ETH0 and ETH0 adapter, as well as an an LO, our loopback adapter. That's what we currently have. You could also see this maybe like by an IPA. Okay, that would also show similar information. It doesn't really matter whichever one you're comfortable with for something like this. I just need some way to figure out what type of networking configuration do I currently have. And as you will see here, if you look through either of those, we don't have any IP addresses. We're not connected to any network. Remember, this was all just internal. And if I do the same thing over at my Ubuntu machine and ifconfig, you'll see this one, it doesn't have an ETH0. It happens to have this ENP-OS3 adapter is what it has by default. But still, same idea. This particular adapter, it does not have an IP address. There's no networking that's been assigned to this. In many of the competition environments, or if I am here just working within my own computer and I want to set up my own environment, you're going to have to learn how to do this statically. I'm going to have to learn how to manually configure all of my IP addresses, and that's what I'm going to go through, just one way how to do this in this video. There are more than one ways as to how to actually configure an address statically, but I'd like to teach how to go through the interfaces file and learn how to do this through that. So the interfaces file is another file built into Linux that allows you to set up either dynamic or static addressing schemes for the different interfaces that you have. And this is another file that requires elevated privileges. So on my MSF admin guy, I'll do a sudo. And then I'll just modify this file with nano. You can do this with nano or VI or vim or whatever. I'll do sudo nano, and this is at /etc/network/interfaces. Okay, that's the particular file that we're looking to interact with. And you can type in your MSF password again if you haven't. And so what this does is this shows information about the different interfaces that we have. And if you remember, we had one called LO, that was my loopback address, as well as we had one for ETH0, an Ethernet address. They all follow a very specific form. The auto means it'll turn on by default when you turn on your computer. So it is important to have an auto ETH0 built in there. And then it has an iFace. Yes, we have an interface, ETH0. It's an internet address, iNet. And you see currently I have one set to be DHCP. And right now there's no DHCP server passing out addresses, which is why my Metasploitable machine doesn't have an IP address. So in this particular configuration, we're going to change this from DHCP to static. So I'm going to delete out where it says DHCP, and I'm going to type in static. On the next line, and it's kind of good to just tab things in just for organization purposes, is where I can actually declare what type of address that I want to have. So I'm going to have ADDRESS, I'm going to have an address, and I want to have, maybe we'll just have a simple class C 192.168.1. Let's say this guy will be 101. My Metasploitable machine will be my first machine, 101. Okay. Then immediately after this, I have to declare what my net mask is going to be. Net mask is also required. And the net mask, remember, this indicates we'll have just a class C, which will be 255.255.255.0. And remember what that indicates is wherever there's a 255, that means that those bits, that particular octet in my IP address, represents the network that I'm connected to. Wherever there's a 0, it means that those bits represent a host bit. So to translate that real quick, that means I'm connecting myself to the 192.168.1 network, and I am device number 101 on that network. That's what my net mask is indicating. And that's fine. There is additional like broadcast information that you could put in here or DNS information, but because we don't have that stuff going on right now, this is the bare minimum of what we need to do to declare our address. So I'll hit Control X to actually save my changes. Y, yes, and I'll just overwrite the existing file by pressing Enter. So now if I were to go back into that file, just hit the same, I'll hit an up arrow and go back into the file, we'll see, okay, those changes actually were made. Okay, hit Control X just to be sure. So if I check my configuration right now, do an ifconfig again, do I actually have my IP address yet? And under ETH0, you see it currently does not list my IP address. So any changes you make to the interface file, you have to actually reset your interface for the changes to take place. Sometimes people like to just do a full restart on their computer. That's okay. Otherwise, it requires you to know what service is actually managing your networking right now. And in Linux, there could be a couple different services managing your networking. So you kind of got a little bit of a hit or miss as to which one actually is it. For the Metasploitable machine, though, we can restart this particular service. Again, this requires elevated privileges, so I'll do a sudo. And the service where we're accessing is in /etc/init.d/networking. Okay? And this is a particular service, and a command that we can give to a service is restart. Okay, so I've got sudo /etc/initd/networking restart. Okay, and that will restart my interface configuration as well as go and look at that file. So now if I do my ifconfig, we'll see I now actually have an inet address of 192.168.1.101. And that's a particular sequence of commands that will work for Metasploitable. It doesn't necessarily work for every version of Linux, but it does work on Metasploitable. So let's take a look at how I might be able to do something similar over on Ubuntu. So if we remember, let's try being consistent in doing the interfaces file again. So I could do a sudo nano /etc/network/interfaces, my password for NSA. And now you see this particular file looks similar, but it doesn't have quite exactly the same information. And if you remember from before, you have to actually add in the interface, whereas in Metasploitable, they kind of had some of this stuff already typed out. So just for reference, just so that you can remember, okay, if you remember the virtual box that I've created here under Ubuntu, this already has an interface ENP0S3. So why don't we assign an IP address to that guy, ENP0S3. So I'll go back into my interfaces file, and I'm going to start creating another interface here that I want to automatically turn on. It was ENP0S3. Okay, and then I'll do it again here. So I start writing out my information. I'm going to have an interface, ENP0S3. I'm going to have an internet address form, INET, and I want it to be statically assigned. Okay, so you have to put that information in that very specific order. Next, I'm going to declare my address by typing out my address is 192.168.1. So I'm putting them on the same network as my Metasploitable machine, and I'm going to be number 102 on my Ubuntu machine. Okay, and then I'll have my net mask to actually verify that I'm on a class C 255.255.255.0. So that puts me on 192.168.1 is my network, and I am device number 102 on that network. So let's go ahead and quit this out. I'm going to save the changes by pressing Control X and then Y and then Enter. Okay, and then just like before, I'm going to have to reset my interfaces. Okay, so let's see if I can do a sudo /etc/init.d/networking restart. So I'm going to restart my service, and now when I do my ifconfig, you see I now have internet address 192.168.1.102. Now how can I actually test to see if this is working? Remember we have a ping utility, a ping command. So I could try pinging. It just tests connectivity between another device. So I'm going to see if I can ping my own address, 192.168.1.102 on my Ubuntu machine. And you see I actually am able to ping myself. It comes back pretty quick. And then the real moment of truth here, I'll press Control C to stop that, will be, can I ping the Metasploitable machine? Can I ping the 101 machine? And you'll see here, yes, it does indeed go and ping, and that'll just kind of ping forever. And I'll do the same thing on my Metasploitable guy just to make sure that he can see as well. So I will do a ping 192.168.1.102 for him, see if he can ping the Ubuntu machine. And they can indeed ping each other. They can see each other. So we've now successfully configured the networking on both of these guys so that they can see each other all on the same network. So hopefully now my Kali machine is turned on, and we'll be able to log into Kali as root. And then, did I have a password for this guy? Yeah, we had password for him. And let's see if we can configure him to also be on the same network. So we'll have all three machines operating on a 192.168.1 network. And we'll see if we could get them pinging each other, and then for future videos we'll be able to start doing things across the network with each other. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to open up a terminal, and just like before, if I try typing out an ifconfig, you see I have an ETH0. I've got an ETH0 interface, but it does not it's not currently configured for anything. So I'm going to try going and modifying that particular file, nano/etc/network/interfaces. You see again, just like before, there's nothing typed in here, so I have to add it in. Auto eth0, iface eth0 inet static. We're doing a static configuration. I'm going to have address is 192.168.1, and we'll make that Kali machine 103, and let's put them on the same network by doing a net mask of 255.255.255.0. Control X and save these changes to the file. Sure, we'll write out the file, and then we'll do a /etc/init.d/networking restart. And after I've restarted the service, I do my ifconfig again, and you see I now have that 192.168.1.103. And let's confirm it through a ping, 192.168.1.101. I can indeed go and ping the Metasploitable guy. I'll press Control C, hit a little up arrow then, and now let's try pinging our Ubuntu machine with a ping 192.168.1.102. And there we go. I can see my Ubuntu machine as well. So we've been able to successfully configure the networking between the three different devices to now have on the 192.168.1 network using host addresses 101, 102, and 103 for our three machines. Let's see how we could do this in Windows as well. So in Windows, I'll show there's a handful of different ways you could get to the setting, but I'll show through the control panel. So through my start button, I'm just going to pop open control panel and kind of go from there. Through Control Panel, I'm going to go to Network and Internet, and then to the Network and Sharing Center. Another way you could get that is if you were to go to the bottom right corner and right-click on your networking icon, you could directly get to your Network and Sharing Center as well that way. From here on the left, you could go to Change Adapter Settings, and this allows you to see which adapters you have and how they are actually configured. So right now I've got a Wi-Fi adapter that I'm not currently connected to a network, but I could configure myself so that when I do connect, I connect with a static address. And the way you do this is I could go to this guy, I could right-click on him and say Properties. And under the Properties for any one of these adapters, we should have an IPv4 property. So Internet Protocol version 4, here we go. I go ahead and click Properties again. And you'll see here the setting is currently be obtain an IP address automatically, and that's our DHCP setting. If I wanted to do a static configuration in Windows, you would just change this to a use the following IP address, and this is where I could go and type in something like 192.168.1. You got to be kind of careful with your tab and arrow key buttons in through here. Tab will kind of jump it on to the next. So 1, and let's say I wanted to do this guy as 105. He's not actually connected to the same network, but that's okay. When you click on your subnet mask, this is where you have to put in what class network are you on, like a class C. Am I connected to a default gateway? So maybe I'm on 192.168.1, and maybe there's a router at address 1. Oop, there we are, 192.168.1.1. Maybe that's where my router is, so I'd have to configure where my default gateway goes. Maybe I have a DNS server that I know about on this network, or maybe I'd use something like 8.8.8.8 for Google's And this is something that a lot of times Windows wants to validate upon exit to make sure no one else is using this IP address. Windows can do that as well. It'll let you know if there's an IP conflict on the network. So otherwise, you just go ahead and I would click OK, and then I click Close. It is important that you do have to click Close to that as well. Otherwise, the setting doesn't actually go and check yet. Just by clicking that first OK, that's not enough. You do need to hit the next one to actually go and check. So if I connected to a Wi-Fi network right now, I would no longer ask for an IP address. I would specifically try to use one of the existing IP addresses through Windows. If I wanted to change it back to DHCP, which I will, remember through your properties, IPv4, I would just then say obtain automatically. And remember, you have to click OK and then click OK, click Close again. Don't just click the first one, it won't be enough. Okay, and after you come back, that's how you can statically configure if you're on a Windows device, whether it be a Windows Server, whether it be a Windows Home. They can all be done through the control panel. So in future videos, we'll see now that we've kind of got some computers networked together, what are some additional networking configurations or files we might want to be interested in, as well as starting to see services across a couple different computers.